again at Christian Village Church. We're going to share with you an approach to the book of Matthew here that is going to set the stage for your understanding about what's going on now. Why the changes in the universe now. Why recessions. Why the change in the Soviet Union. Why the change in South Africa. Why the change in Latin America. What's going on here. All of the things that are happening and are happening with such speed are actually spelled out in the universe and in the stars, and it's the way it is. I mean, I know that many people have difficulty with that, but you shouldn't, because you are a star. I mean, you live on one in the middle of the universe, and as such, it's important for you to know about your environment and your surroundings, you know. People are very prone to want to know, you know, I'm going to go around and find out about, you know, what kind of a neighborhood this is before we move in. Well, what, you know, you live in the neighborhood of the cosmos, and you're told don't look around, don't look at it. Let's take a look and see, okay? It's contained in Matthew 26, it's on page 28 in those little Bibles, page 28 in the New Testament. And I'm not here to give you an astrology lesson per se. I'm not here to give you a biblical lesson. I'm here to share some things with you. You do what you want with them, all right? You want to pursue it further, I suggest that you do. You can do it, and you'll reveal to yourself very interesting things. And your children will learn very interesting things. Because here you can take the Bible and go and confirm the Bible, not in a church or in a Christian bookstore, but go to the planetarium. It's all there. It's all written in the stars, long before it was ever put on paper. Okay, Matthew 26, verse 14. And it says in Matthew 26, verse 14, then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went unto the chief priests. One of the 12, okay? The reason there's 12 disciples and apostles is one reason and one reason only. There are 12 signs of the zodiac. 12 constellations. That's the only reason there are 12 disciples. It's the only reason there are 12 apostles. It's the only reason there are 12 tribes of Israel, because of the 12 signs of the zodiac. Okay? And in fact, if you scamper through Genesis 49 one day, you will see Jacob actually blessing his children, but in reality describing the effects of the 12 signs of the zodiac on man. It's in Genesis 49. What you're going through right now, and you're seeing all of the upheaval in the world, is you're going through and entering into the age of Aquarius. Aquarius is a spiritual constellation. It is spirit. And Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. Uranus is the closest planet to the sun. And it has always, since the beginning of time, or since the beginning of astronomy, or those things that involve themselves with the universe, been known as the son of the sun. The Son of God. What's happening right now in your universe is the Son of God, Uranus, is coming back for his bride. The bridegroom is returning for his bride, which is Gaia, the earth. And it happens in Aquarius. Uranus never had a house until now. Okay? A house is a solar zodiac concept. Uranus never had one. He was the Son of God who had no place to lay his head. Okay? When Uranus enters into Aquarius and comes back to take his bride, he will rule for 1,000 years. 1,000 years Uranus will rule as the sun passes through one half of Aquarius. As Uranus moves in, and this is the spirit, as Uranus moves in, it drives out Jupiter, which rules Pisces and is the planet of wealth. What's happening here is the Son of God is returning to rule and reign for 1,000 years and is driving out the money changer. The money changer is being driven out of the temple. That's why the upheaval in the financial institutions. Have you read the papers and seen the banks collapsing left and right all over the place? It's exactly why. Because spirit is driving the money changers out of the temple. And what you're going to see in the next years as you live is a tremendous upheaval in systems as you've known them all over the world, and a redistribution of wealth and monies and all of this stuff, because Uranus is no respecter of persons, and all people will begin to share equally in the wealth. And it's really going to hurt the establishment and the system. That's what this is all about. That's what's all about. Is nobody can change it. See? What happens is, if you were to talk with the ancient astrologers, such as the Magi, they would tell you, because they knew Uranus tears down to build up better. Remember, Jesus says there won't be a rock left standing one on top of the other. Uranus tears down to build up better. So this is basically where you're at. This is what's going on. To rule and reign for 1,000 years, the Son of God is returning to claim his bride. The marriage will happen in Aquarius, the man with the pitcher of water. Do you have your little chart? I tell you what we'll do. Tell you what we'll do before you do that. I don't have this marked down. The rest of you, find the chapter of Luke. Matthew, Mark, Luke. Okay? Luke, would you go with me to Luke chapter 22? So do you have a pretty good idea of what's happening in the sky now as you're alive? So that when you read the newspapers, you'll say, and they'll say on the television, well, we don't know what's going on. You'll say, I do. And when you tell your friends, I know what's going on, they'll say, well, how do you know? I go to the Christian Village Church.
And they go,
woo. Okay? This one, you got this? Okay. Now get your Bible in your left hand. What page is Luke on? Luke 22.
83.
Page 83? Okay. Now I want you to hold this sideways like this. Okay, do you see at the very bottom? Well, you see the black circle around the thing at the bottom. You see the circle around? Okay. Now, do you see the man with the water there? Okay. And I want you to read Luke 22:10 as we glance. Behold, when you're entered into the city. City means consciousness. Now, there shall a man meet you. Take a look over here, bearing a pitcher of water. Take a look at your chart. Do you see that? Do you see the man with the pitcher of water? Follow him into the house where he enters, and he will show you a large upper room made ready, which is the right hemisphere of your brain, and I will meet you there, and we will sup. You see it? That's the man with the pitcher of water. The sun is entering into Aquarius. Uranus is hot on its heels to culminate the wedding, and the banking institutions and the people who have taken advantage of you all of your life are shaken in their boots, and all they've got left to do is swing out against those people who are following this spirit and throw red paint at them, but it's not going to change a thing, because their systems are going to come tumbling down, and the people are going to be lifted up, and the people are going to be given that which is God's bounty, because the Christ is returning. Now, let's get to, with that little prelude, let us get to the meat of what I'm talking about. Matthew 26, where we were, page 28. Matthew 26. You see what I just told you? You don't have to say, well, that's what he said. You can go to the planetarium, and the man there will show it to you. It doesn't require me to tell you about this. You can go to, this is happening in the universe today. All right? And this is what's happening. The banking institutions, the financial institutions all over the world. It's not just happening in Russia. It's happening right here. Right here. And it's just the beginning of it. Right here. And you're going to be free. You are going to be set free. Uranus redistributes the wealth because Uranus does not say, well, he's a Wall Street broker, he should get it all. Uranus says, now give some to Don. Thank you. Give some to Mary back there. That's what Uranus says. This is a great time. This is an exciting time. But remember, your religious institutions are built on capitalism and communism. Money and don't say nothing. And they're going to shake from this. And they're not going to take it easy, as you can see. But that's the way it is.
Bill,
Yes?
morning,
Hold it.
this morning on
No,
one of
you
those,
can't do that on
please.
Oh, please, don't put me on TV. After all,
This
I'm
morning
just
on one of, yes.
Yeah.
This morning on one of those talk shows, there was, you know how they have the captions underneath people's names, and it said, reformed yuppie. You know, underneath, and how, it was funny, but how she has decided not to strive for the money anymore, but whatever purchases she makes and however she makes her living is according to how it affects the earth and how it affects her life, and you know, really to the higher happiness rather than just money, money, money.
That's right, and that's exactly what's happening. That is exactly. But see, the large institutions, the large part of the system will not give that by their own self. They're not going to give it back. But Uranus is going to take it. And Uranus is going to take it, and Uranus is going to take it from them and give it to you. That's God's promise. So this ain't so bad after all, is it? Okay. One of the, Matthew 26, verse 14, where we're at, okay? Matthew 26 and verse 14. Okay. And one of the 12 called Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot represents the constellation, always has, everybody knows it except the constellation Scorpio. Who drew the Last Supper? Leonardo da Michelangelo, or what was his name? Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci was an astrologer. He painted the Last Supper with Christ representing the sun surrounded by the 12 signs of the zodiac. He knew exactly what he was doing as he positioned Judas 8th from the right. The 8th sign was Scorpio. And that's fact. Now, Scorpio rules the lower nature, and Scorpio causes man to rebel against that which is the higher nature. And that's exactly what's happening here in this particular story. And this here in Scorpio unfolds the drama that you find in the Bible and is being acted out now in this cosmic drama of the Son being crucified and the resurrection and all this business. If you look at the sign, now you have it here, okay? Hold it this way, okay, with the other part. You looked at Aquarius a little bit ago. Hold it down. If you look at the sign, you see the scorpion, do you see it at the bottom, is trying to sting the heel of the man. Do you see that? Okay. Now turn it upside down. Just turn it right upside down. At the same time, you'll see the man bruising the head of the adversary, Draco, the dragon. Do you see that? Does everybody see it? Because I want you to see it. If you look in this constellation, you'll see the scorpion stinging the heel of the man, and you turn it over, you'll see the man treading on the head of the serpent. Okay? Everybody got it? Okay? That's where the Bible was written. He will sting your heel, you will bruise his head. Okay? All right. Now, while you're looking at that, I want you to go with me to page 2 in the Bible, which is Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3, and we'll go to verse 15. Now here, God is talking to the adversary. You're called the devil or whatever you want to call it. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. Okay? Now what it's saying here is this is talking about calling it the man, you and me. It shall bruise your head. Now hold your thing upside down and you'll see that star, Hercules, with his foot on top of the head of Draco, the serpent, okay? It shall bruise your head. Now turn it upside down and we'll fulfill that scripture. And you, okay, shall bruise his heel. Do you see? The scorpion stinging the heel of the man. That's exactly where Genesis 3:15 came from. Okay? All right. Now notice, when you were reading this, go back to Matthew 26 on page 28 of your New Testament. When you're reading, where does the aspect of this conflict, in other words, where does Scorpio go? Where does Judas go in order to in order to kill the Christ nature out of you? Matthew 26 and verse 14. Then one of the 12, Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests. Isn't that amazing? Religion. Where do you go if you want to be sure that you will kill the Christ effect out of people? Go to religion. Go to religion, and it will all go away. because you will then be turned from the inner Christ to the church. And the church becomes all in all. The pastor, the evangelist, the singing books, and all of the different things we do with water and smoke and all of this stuff. That becomes important. So this turns away. It moves you to religion and takes you away from that which is the Christ within you. It's religion. Now, how do they do this? Okay. You go upstairs. You can't see it too well now, thanks to Alviro and Kathy Gill, who worked one day scrubbing down. But when we were vandalized up here, the words were put all over the place. This is a Satan pit. This is a devil pit. Bill D is a cult leader and a Satan leader. And all of this kind of stuff. So what do? They make up stories. They lie. Many of you have come here. We're up to Matthew 26:14. We have taught every single scripture in the book of Matthew. Every single scripture in the book of Revelation. The Old Testament, the New Testament, the whole Bible. See? And yet they'll stand up, they don't teach the Bible. Okay? And so they make up lies. But you're in Matthew 26, and you're in Matthew 26:14. Jump over to Matthew 26:59, right where you are. The chief priests and the elders of the church, and all the council of the church sought false witness against Jesus to put him to death. They lied. They lied then, and they lied now. Wherever the living Christ is being exalted, whether it be in a store or in a church, they'll make up lies to try to drive him out. Because the system must survive. The system which is corrupt and which has had its hand in your pocket and so forth, that system which is so corrupt, will lie in order to kill the Christ impulse. Now look at, here we go in Matthew 26:15. Okay? And this is where we get into this. And he said, "What will you give me, and I will deliver him unto you?" And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. The drama begins. Let's go away from this. 30 pieces of silver. Very, very important that it's 30. Very, very important that it's silver. Okay? Now here's where this comes from originally. If you want to keep your finger in there, because we'll go back, go to page 769 in your Old Testament, and the rest of you find the book of Zechariah. Okay? Zechariah. It's towards the end of the Old Testament, okay? Go to Zechariah chapter 11. Those little Bibles you got with you, it's on page 769 in the Old Testament. Zechariah chapter 11, all right? And we'll show you where this is. See, you don't want to say, well, this is a fulfillment of the Old Testament. You want to say, why 30? Why 30 pieces of silver? Zechariah chapter 11, and go to verse 12, okay? "And I said unto them, if you think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. So they weighed for my price 30 pieces of silver." Okay? 30 pieces of silver. The 30 pieces of silver are the 3 decans of the constellation Scorpio. In every constellation, there are 30 degrees. Okay? There are 3 what they call decans. Decan means 10. 3 decans, 30 degrees. You have 12 constellations. 30 times 12 is 360 degrees. And that's what that's all about. So there are 30 degrees or 3 decans in that. Silver represents in mysticism the moon, which represents consciousness. Okay? So here we have the 30 degrees of Scorpio brought into the picture as it relates to that which is human consciousness. And what will happen here is when the effects of the 30 degrees of Scorpio, human consciousness, are felt, there will be a rebellion against that which is the higher from that which is the lower. The struggle goes on. Tremendous struggle goes on. And Scorpio plays out the drama beautifully as it applies to the mind. Okay? Now, who are the 3 decans? Who represent? You got 3 decans, which means each decan is 10 degrees. You've got 10 degrees 1, 10 degrees 2, 10 degrees 3, equals the 30 degrees, which equals the 30 pieces of silver. Who are they? Take a look at your sign there, okay? And if you'll look at it, do you see the man with the serpent? He's struggling with the serpent right above the scorpion. All right, that's Ophiuchus. 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 Do you see him struggling with the serpent? That's 10 degrees, okay? The other 10 degrees is, do you see the serpent? If you see right by his head, his name, Serpens. That's 10 degrees, okay? And the final 10 degrees is if you turn that upside down, you'll see Hercules. So there are the stars that are located in the constellation Scorpio, which make up the 30 degrees, the 30 pieces of silver. Okay. Now, Ophiuchus, the names are a little screwy, but I'm getting to a point. Ophiuchus represents the man or the mind. He's depicted, look at him, in a great struggle with the serpent. All right? You see him struggling with the serpent? That's you. That's you, in a struggle with that which is trying to do something to you. It's the same thing with Jesus portrays that in the Bible. Struggling with that, trying to pull that because it's after something that you have. Now watch. Come with me. Keep your finger where you're at. But come with me to the book of Revelation. And go to Revelation chapter 3. It's on page 228 in those Bibles here. Revelation chapter 3. Okay? With me? Go to Revelation chapter 3 and go to verse 11. All right? Here, are you with me? Okay, here. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which you have, that no man, man means the mind, the lower mind, take your crown. Okay? Now, watch with me. Take your chart. You got your chart in front of you? Do you see Ophiuchus struggling with the serpent? Follow the serpent through Ophiuchus' left hand. Follow the serpent up and look at the serpent's head. Look what the serpent is reaching and trying to take. It's a star called Corona Borealis, the crown. You see it? You see it? That's the drama. That's the drama of Scorpio. It's the drama of the Bible. It is the Ophiuchus struggling as he is being stung at the heel. See, when you look at the other part of that is it will sting your heel and it will bruise your head. Basically what that's saying is your foot is symbolized as the part that touches the lower mind of the earth. And when you touch the lower mind, you get stung. That's the stinging of your heel. But you bruise its head as you rise up into the higher mind, and that which is higher consciousness, okay? So there, the lower impulse is trying to steal the relationship with God that activates in the mind. Now, what I would show you here, I'm going to show you something really interesting, and I'm going to try to write these names down because the names are, what you got there, these are stars in the sky. These are stars, they've been there since the beginning of time, these stars. And it says in Psalm 147, God named all these. He called it Ophiuchus, he called it the serpent, he called it Hercules, and he positioned all of these things so that you have this whole drama was drawn in the sky before it was ever put on paper. Okay? Now, what I want to show you is the connection here between Jesus and Ophiuchus. And that's where it really gets interesting. Okay? And then you'll see why this 30 pieces of silver is part of the Judas Scorpio drama. Ophiuchus, is that star deacon, is identified in Greek mythology with something that the word is even worse, Aesculapius. Okay, so we'll just, I don't know how we could make these little nicknames or something. We could call this guy Opie. And Askew. We call it Askew. Maybe we could, because Ophiuchus and Aquarius and all isn't beginning. Okay, now this is the interesting part here. In Greek mythology, Ophiuchus, Opie, is connected to Askew as one and the same, being, okay, the son of Apollo. And Apollo, in Greek mythology, is God. So then this Ophi is the Son of God, in the same way that Jesus is the Son of God. Okay? And this is the myth. Now listen to this and try to relate it to the Bible. The myth is that Ophi there restored Hippolytus, another guy, to life. In other words, Hippolytus was dead, and Ophi raised him from the dead. Think of Lazarus. Do you remember? So here you've got Hippo, we'll call him. He gets raised from the dead, and we'll come over here and think of Lazarus. So Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. Ophi raised Hippo from the dead. Now the point was, when Ophi raised Hippo from the dead, he was hailed in Greek mythology as the great physician. That's interesting, isn't it? The great physician. And then something happened. Pluto, not the one from Walt Disney, this is a... Pluto, the ruler of the underworld, okay? Now, follow me real carefully here, because this is where this came from. Pluto, who's the ruler of the underworld, got ticked off at Ophi because he had deprived the underworld of hanging on to Hippo. See, Hippo was dead down there. And when Ophi raised Hippo from the dead, Pluto lost him. Now remember, when you look in the Bible, it was just after Jesus raised Lazarus that the great turmoil began. Why? Because he deprived the lower of its prize. He pulled that which is death and set it free. And the lower, the underworld, that which is the lower mind, then said, it's got to die. It's got to be killed. Same thing that's happening here. See, people getting ticked off because in you, that which was dead is being raised to life. And the underworld, the lower mind, can't handle it. Do you see what I'm saying to you? Okay. Now, what happened was, Pluto was so upset by this, he had Jupiter, the god of wealth, kill Ophi. Huh? The money changers, the 30 pieces of silver, killed Jesus because they were so upset because he had robbed the underworld of that which was the dead. But here's the good part. After he was killed, after Ophi was killed, Apollo raised him up to heaven. After Jesus was killed, God raised him up to heaven. Okay? That's where it comes from. That's the story. That's the story. Now I want to read to you the hymn of Aesculapius. Go with me and listen to it. This is the mythological hymn to Aesculapius. You ready for this? Listen to this. Look it up. Read about it. Hail, great physician of the world, all hail. Hail, mighty infant, who in years to come shall heal the nations and defraud the tomb. Swift be thy growth, thy triumphs unconfined. Make kingdoms thicker and increase mankind. Thy daring art shall animate the dead and draw the thunder on your guilty head. For you shall die, but from the dark abode rise up victorious to be twice a god. The hymn of Aesculapius, who got in big trouble with the underworld because he resurrected this one who had died. The hymn of Jesus, who got in big trouble with the underworld because he had resurrected Lazarus. It's all symbolic because of that which is the Christ who gets in big trouble with religion when he resurrects that which in you which has died. They can't handle it. And they'll come with all of the venom and vengeance against you when you speak of that which has happened here. Yes, come up. Come up.
In the same scene you were discussing, in Luke 22:3, it said, then entered Satan into Judas.
Okay. Exactly.
Pluto into the Lord of the underworld.
The Lord of the underworld. Exactly.
Sure.
Good. Good. See? All right. He said he was paying attention. I thought he was listening. He said, hey, this guy's nuts. Hey, what is he? Some astrologer? But what is to be afraid of understanding that you live in the Sistine Chapel? That Michelangelo created in a building, but the universal natural God created the heavenly ceiling above your earth. And he drew the whole story. The whole story's always been there for you. Yeah. It says, and we won't keep it too much longer, but it says in Matthew 26:16, from that time on. Thought you were done, huh, Don? Don put his Bible and I said, oh, this guy's got to be done now. What's he going to do for an encore? Matthew 26:16, okay? And it says, and from that time on, he sought opportunity to betray him. Ha! Hey, who's this? Judas is going to betray Jesus, right? How can you betray somebody when they know in advance that you're, when you know in advance that somebody's going to betray you, how can you be betrayed? I mean, you don't do anything to stop it. It's a mystical betrayal. And in considering these 30 pieces of silver, we're considering that which is the 3 decons of Scorpio, as we said, and it's all consciousness. But this all comes down to the Passover. This is where all of this happens, you know, because Judas is going to betray Jesus at the Passover, right? But you can't study the Passover simply in reading in Matthew, because you've got to go to Luke 22:10, where we were, page 83. Okay? Page 83 in the New Testament, Luke 22, okay, and verse 10. And you saw it before. When they asked Jesus, where will we celebrate the Passover? He says, behold, when you see the man with the pitcher of water, Aquarius, enter into the house. That's what's happening now. That's what's occurring now in your universe and within you, the man with the pitcher of water. Uranus is starting to have its impact. Uranus is starting to have its control. Uranus is starting to drive the money changers out. And the banking institutions and the governments and the religions are crashing to the ground. And all their money that they've accumulated and ripped out of your pockets is being freed to be returned to you. That's what Uranus is doing. That's why you should jump up, because maybe you can't get excited that Jesus is coming. Maybe you can't get excited that Uranus is coming. But for God's sake, get excited. You're going to get your money back. Ain't that great? You can pay off the mortgage and everything. Heck, you care, the banks. Come on, Uranus. You see how excited you can get about the second coming when you know, hey, I'm going to get my money back. Let's go. Hey, let's go, Jesus. I'm telling you. Isn't that great? You get your money back. But you see, in the Passover, in Luke 22, see, if you look in Luke 22, verse 23, where the heck am I? Luke 22, verse 23, it said, after the thing was, when Jesus said, the guy I give the sop to, it says, they began to inquire among themselves which of them it was that should do this thing. Nobody ever knew. But look now, as to the identity of this Judas, John 13, and I'm really closing into the end of this thing. John 13, and that's page 103. You don't have to do too much more. John 13. You with me out there in television land? A little normal Sunday morning church service here. John 13, verse 26. Here is Jesus saying, here is the guy that's going to betray me. Now, why doesn't he just come over and say, you see this guy with the yellow shirt on? This is the nudnuk that's going to do it. The fakak, after everything I done for him, what's he going to do? He's going to give me all of this grief. Oi. He didn't say that. He says what? What does he say? John 13, verse 26. He says, it is he whom I will give a sop when I have dipped it. Not a sap. He didn't call him a sap. He says, the guy I give the sop. Look that up when you get home. Look it up in Webster's dictionary, the word sop. S-O-P. Sop means to dip bread in gravy and eat it, okay? But you'll also find that sop means asking a favor of one who is in authority. It is a conciliatory bribe or a gift. Judas was the treasurer. He was the only guy in that bunch that Christ could trust to do what he was told to do. So he was telling the one in authority, it's you, pal. You've got, you know why? Because in every single one of you, there has to be a Judas who will allow your flesh to be killed so you can be set free to become Christ. Okay? So he said yes. He gave him the sop. And then, Judas went out and killed himself. That's not exactly a kind of a guy who was planning a betrayal. I mean, if it worked, he got his money, and he goes and commits suicide. It's saying that once that this has happened, that instinct in you that must do this will then be dead, but it must kill itself. It cannot be killed by anybody. It can't be killed by church. It can't be killed by religion. It must come from within you. Inside of you, that betrayer must die, but then you are free. And if it wasn't for that betrayer, you couldn't have been set free. We'll go into that another time. I've done a tape on that about Judas wasn't a bad guy after all. But I want you to know something. When you look at this story, don't look at it literally or you're going to miss the whole thing. Did Judas actually do all this? Did Judas actually do all that? I want to ask you something. I want to show you something. Judas. Did he do all of this? Or is this allegory? Does this come from the Scorpio drama? Is this allegory? Is it mythology? The reason I say because he was one of the 12. Then he commits suicide according to the Bible, which means there's only 11. Right? One guy's down, 11 to go. Okay? I want to show you something. Come with me. It talks about, the Apostle Paul talks about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Page 165, 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter, hey, I don't know whether you know what the heck I'm talking about, but you got to say this has been a pretty interesting Sunday morning. And it's not the run-of-the-mill Amazing Grace type of encounter here, is it? Okay. Okay, now here's the Apostle Paul telling about who Jesus was seen by after he resurrected. You waiting for this? 1 Corinthians 15, 5. And that he was seen of Cephas, that's Peter, then of the 12. This guy doesn't know anything about Judas. He didn't know Judas was dead. There was only 11. So what have you found there? A mistake in the Bible? Or, Paul says in his Bible that Jesus would betray, but he never mentions Judas the whole time. In any of the books that Paul wrote, the word Judas is never mentioned. Sorry. He was seen of Cephas and then of the Paul. Of the 12, he didn't know. He knows of betrayal, but he knows nothing of Judas because you're looking at allegory. You're looking at something that's cosmic. You're looking at something that's universal. Because did he appear to the 12? Certainly appears to the 12. Because when he appears one place. Do you know that in your brain you have 6 aspects of consciousness on the right side and 6 aspects of consciousness on the left side? You can see it. You can look at a brain, and a doctor will show you. It's divided into 6 on the left and 6 at the right. You have 12. Just like in the universe there are 12 signs of the zodiac, and they interrelate with one another. That's how you function. And you go through these various things that you go through as you go through the different seasons of the soul, just like you go through the seasons of the year on the earth. See? And so when there is finally the crucifixion of the flesh within you, and that which is the Jesus from the sun of the solar plexus rises up to the mind and then makes his appearance in the higher realms of consciousness, who does he appear to? To the 12. First he appears to Peter, which is the flesh as you move upward, and then he appears to the 12, which is the perfection now that was in you. But if you take it literally, you can't. That's not what it means. It's a great drama. So Judas of Scorpio is the Judas who acts within us to see that we are crucified. And the Judas within us must kill itself. And it must do what it has to do if we are to be saved. And so that's the little drama portrayed out in the heavens in the constellation Scorpio between you and your universe. To acquaint you with the fact that this magnificent drama has been written in the universe and in the stars long before it was ever written on a book. And to also acquaint you with the fact of the mighty Uranus, the Son of God, the bridegroom coming for his bride, who will rule and reign for 1,000 years, and who will take away the wealth which has been misgotten from the systems and give it to the people. That's what you've got to look for in this new age. And I can tell you right now, if all of those out there knew that Uranus was going to give all the money back to the people, they'd all be down here lined up to get their share.